wanted to quickly thank everybody who was involved in this project, New York Jewelry for providing us the opportunity, especially Bella and JD who worked really hard, the Canadian Council, especially Matt and Natasha, who were extremely patient and very good with us providing this space, so thank you. Wonderful panelists, Monsieur Yoma, Nadia Castonway, Louis Peroni, and Chantal Shu, who took the time and energy to be here. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And all the artists who submitted and have worked in the digital exhibition. We thank you guys too. It was great. And then, as Matt said, we have a reception after this that we're hoping to see you all there. So thank you. And then now our wonderful moderator, Sarah Rachel Brown. Where are you?
I'm right
Oh, right
here.
here.
Literally right here.
Yeah. So it's going to pass on to her. Thank you for doing this. We really appreciate it. It's a huge honor to have you on board. So
Thank you.
I'll just pass it on to you. Thank you.
So push. Oh, goodness. Wow, those are loud. I can't do this alone. Take a seat, take a seat. Thanks everyone for being here. For those of you that don't know who I am, Sarah Rachel Brown, I am not Canadian. I am American. I'm from Iowa. I am the host and producer of a podcast called Perceived Value. So I talk a lot, and I think that's why they invited me to do this. Today we're going to be discussing, of course I'm going to introduce all the panelists. They are all involved in organizations, Canadian organizations, that support and facilitate opportunities for contemporary jewelry artists, Canadian contemporary jewelry artists, and some in the greater spectrum of, internationally. And we're also going to talk about ways in which they do support them and why it's important, and the fact that these organizations are outside of academia as well, which is important, because I feel I can relate to that as a non-academic. Sometimes when you graduate, most of the times, you leave these institutions and then you can feel, kind of like you're floating, like where do you get your support or your community? And these individuals have really helped facilitate that for artists. So I want to go down the line. We're going to start with you, Chantal, and briefly describe the organization that you are representing and what your organization does, what's your mission, and how long you've existed as well.
Sure. So my organization is called Co-Adorn Art Jewelry Society. We're based in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And our mandate is to focus mostly on the area in Halifax and in Nova Scotia, Atlantic Canada, to create opportunities for artists through exhibitions, retail sales, things like that. So we've been around since 2017.
Nadia?
Hi.
Oh, you gotta push the button.
Yeah. I'll use this one. Oh, hi.
Yeah.
Hello. Nice to meet you. So I'm Maria Cassonvier. I'm part of Metalade, which is, we're hosting this. And I'm one of the co-founders. We started Metalade back in 2016, pretty much at this time of the year. So it's been pretty much exactly 3 years this November. We are an organization we are not a nonprofit, we're just a bunch of people working together to kind of foster community throughout Canada, and we're not necessarily based anywhere in particular. We cover we try to cover all of Canada. There's 5 team members, 4 team members other than me working with me. They're all in Toronto except for me, who's in Montreal. And we do, we try to create a link between all of the smaller communities of artists throughout the country and share information. We have editorial content, we do articles, interviews with artists. It's basically most of what we do is share information and create some opportunities of getting together like today here in New York. So yeah,
Cool, you guys are like the facilitators.
sort of, yeah, that makes sense.
I like that.
Hi, I'm Louise Brown, and I'm the past president of the Vancouver Metal Arts Association. We started in around 2011, 2012. Jan Smith, who is a Canadian art jeweler, had the idea of creating something similar to Seattle Metals Guild in Vancouver. And I didn't get on board until a couple of years in, and then I've served on the board, I think for around 5 or 6 years. Does that add up? I don't know. I was president for about 3 years. What else do I need to say?
You're doing great.
Okay, so we provide, the biggest thing is a sense of community for Vancouver-based or the greater Vancouver area jewellery makers. We also have blacksmiths and hobbyists. We'll come to this later. We have a very broad audience for our association. We provide some social events, education, exhibitions. That is probably all I'm going to say right now.
No, that's great. And Noel?
Yeah, hi. So I have 2 hats. I run a gallery for over 20 years in Montreal, but I also I have been invited here for the Labo. It's workshops I started to do about 10 years ago to help the young emerging artists to find their way into the jewelry field. So I've done some creative workshops. So that's what I'm here about. I'm not talking about the gallery, but about what I'm doing with them. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, with the exception of Noel, the other organizations seem relatively new. Like they're kind of in their infancy, correct?
Yeah, we're the oldest, and we're only 6 or 7.
Wow. Okay, so paint this picture for me, because again, I'm American. But in Canada, where is the main education for contemporary jewelry? Like, what are the biggest schools? Do you know that? Noel?
Go for it, Chantal.
Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, which is where Co-Adorn is based. And
Okay.
we started a lot because we would see students graduate and lose access to the opportunities that the school is providing. So we were trying to bridge that gap. We also, because we have a very small population, people tend to leave to go to a bigger city like Toronto or Vancouver when they graduate, and also tend to come back 10 or 15 years after graduating and don't have access to the community anymore. So we're trying to get those people back in and involved with the community.
The thing about Canada that you may not realise is because we're such a small population spread over a big amount of land, there are actually only, I'm trying to make sure, 3 degree granting jewellery programs in Canada. There's none in Vancouver or in the West Coast.
Wow.
There's Vancouver Community College is quite a reasonably well-respected diploma granting program. So there are some artists you'll see on the screen of alumni from there. But that's part of the problem for us is we don't have the academic, well maybe it's also a benefit, we don't have this huge academic community that we're,
That ties you all together.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because Noel, and I know we're talking about the lab, Le Labo? Is it the lab in English? Okay. Because I would say when I was getting to understand the contemporary jewelry field as a whole, that your gallery is pretty well known. So regardless of the size of your community, it seems like your contemporary art jewelry community seems kind of spread out, sparse, and I'm not even sure of the size, even though I'm very aware of many of your artists. You have that gallery that's been supported for 20 years. Has it always been jewelry?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Only jewelry.
only jewelry. Oh, okay. So overall, you would say that most of you started what you did because you just want to see the field grow or have closer links together?
Well, I'd say, I'm gonna speak for Metal-Aid specifically, but I'd say, like myself, I'm from Quebec. I studied in Nova Scotia at the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, and then moved to Toronto for an artist residency, which actually all of us from Metal-Aid are from that same artist residency, called Harbourfront Center, which is, Harbourfront Center in and of itself is such a great institution, based in Toronto to kind of create this craft community in jewelry and other disciplines in craft. And I think from being myself, like going from these 3 different places, and now I'm back in Montreal, I saw that there was a really strong community in Halifax, a really strong community in Quebec, a really strong community in Toronto. I had no idea what was going on in the rest of Canada. And like nobody between these 3 places really like kind of had any contact with each other. There was not really so much communication overlap, and I didn't really, I saw that this could potentially like, there was something to do there and kind of like create links between people and seeing potential and how we could all work together to kind of simulate this community as like, as into Canada as a whole, yeah.
And then with your organizations, you know, the biggest thing I think about when artists need support when outside of academia or in their different communities is often just their studios, like having access to tools and everything after that, or ways to continue their education that aren't through an academia. And it sounds like they don't have that many opportunities in a lot of places. So are there ways in which your organization specifically are helping facilitate? Like, do you have shared studio spaces? Do you have, well, Le Labo sounds incredible when I heard about that. Because, I mean, it sounds, and do we all know, I mean, he briefly introduced it, but for me, Noel, it sounds like it's almost like a mentorship program. Would that be correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you pick a group of individuals that you work with?
I do not any kind of selection. They would just want to take it with me.
Oh, okay.
And it's over 2 years. And the first year is a lot of experimentation. And I give them team to think about what jewelry can be as well. And for 2 years, for first years, it's only experimentation. So I give a team and they have to work for 1 month on that project. And then they come back and doing comments of what they did. And the second year, we try to build a collection. So, and it's very demanding for them because most of them they just graduate from jewelry schools and have very good technical skills, but to think about jewelry is something else. So
Yeah.
when they come to me, it's just because they want to do something else and they want to create something.
They want to push themselves conceptually.
Yeah.
Sounds like grad school. I haven't gone, but like.
Yeah, I think it's exceptional because I think the first years I did it, so 10 years ago, I think 2 years after they were 1 artist have been selected to Schmuck,
Yeah.
which didn't happen for years from Quebec, you know. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
It's a lot cheaper than grad school though, right?
Oh.
I had to ask. I was like, do you charge anything also?
It's not to do money, it's about to help them to build something. So it's not to do with money. And I like to do that. And they can come back, you know, some people are here, Catherine's, the Catherine's. You know, they always come back to me if they need help. You know, even 10 years after, I'm always there to help them.
Yeah, and you're also, I mean, as a gallerist, I'm sure you don't completely focus on Canadian jewelers, correct?
No, it represents maybe 25-30% of the gallery.
But you're fostering your own community. You're like helping
Yeah,
nurture.
but when they come to me, the goal is not to finally work with them after. They
Yeah.
come to me, maybe they're going to take a direction that I'm not looking for from a gallery.
Yeah.
But it's okay, it's not, they know that, so it's fine.
Yeah. With the other organizations, I mean, not so much Metal-Aid, I'm sure it sounds like you're more of like a platform, but with Vancouver and Cowadorn, how are you facilitating opportunities to like further their education? Are you, or do you have shared studio space or anything like that?
We at the very beginning there was like a long-term goal to have a shared studio space. because in Vancouver, if you're from Canada, you know this, that the property prices in Vancouver have gone absolutely crazy over the last 10 years. So a property that may have cost $500,000 7 years, well, you can't, it's into the millions of dollars. It's a lot of dollars, right?
I used to live in Seattle. I completely relate.
Yeah, and there's a lot of renovation happening. So buildings that were used by artists are, the landlords are seeing the opportunity to develop those, so people are being kicked out. So this was a long-term goal. A few years ago, I guess I'd call him an entrepreneur, came to us who is renting industrial type spaces, converting them into studios and creating sort of co-op situations. So we got on board with him and we have a studio. Recently had to move in a week to a new location,
That's fun.
but it worked out all right. And yeah, being having this community where people can meet up and know each other is a good way to band together and make a shared studio space. But it's very, very expensive in Vancouver.
Yeah. How is the Canadian government in terms of funding for artists? Like I can't help but talk about money. It's always my passion. But I am interested, with each of your organizations, everything takes money, and let's be real, we can only work for free for so much. So,
Yeah.
do you guys get any funding at all?
Co-Adorn is not currently eligible for funding because we're too young of an organization. So we live exclusively off of membership dues and the money that we collect from having exhibition entry fees.
Gotcha. How big is your organization?
We have 83 members currently.
Oh, okay. And then what is like membership fees like? What is that?
So for a regular person, it's $25, and our members are not all jewelers. We have suppliers and gallery owners that are members too. And then we ask $20 from students for a January to December membership.
That's very reasonable.
Thank you. It's to cover the cost of running the website.
Okay.
That's all
There we
we're
go.
expecting.
Yeah. And then Metal Aid.
Metal Aid has zero funding. Actually, for the very first time, we asked people to pay an application fee to be part of the digital exhibition, which will also eventually be a catalog. We're super stoked about that. It was $10, which is not much, but that was our first income. Like we've run on our pocket money since the very beginning. We run the website, so that's one expense, and then we've hosted several events and Metal Aid meetups basically. So we've had a few happen in Toronto. There's been only one so far in Montreal, but there's going to be more of those just to bring people together. So those things, and then those things are all funded by the 5 team members who are very devoted.
Who are angels.
Yeah. But that's something we've been discussing ever since we started this, like how can we get some, because there are a lot of funding opportunities through both the Canadian Arts Council and provincial arts councils as well. However, the second we get into this, we need to, right now the fact that we don't have funding, we have all the flexibility we want. So it's like, you need to choose between having to fit into certain boxes and then kind of orient your organization in a certain way so that it matches the funding program, or having full flexibility over all of your activities and figuring it out. So far that's what we've been doing, but we're like that.
It's a slippery slope. I'm the same with the podcast. The minute somebody gives me money, there's expectations, and I am a control freak, and I like to do what I want to do. And they're giving you money for a reason, And even if they say they don't expect anything, they expect something. And for the Vancouver,
VEMA is a member-funded society. We have to register with the BC Societies Act, I think it's called. There was recently a change in that where you could choose between being member funded or something else. The board voted to stay member funded, which meant that we arts across Canada, and then all the provinces have their own arts councils. So, for instance, I applied for grants to come here from both of those organisations. I hadn't heard, well, between you and me and that camera, I think I didn't get them. So, you know, here's the thing. I'm speaking on a panel about Canadian art jewellery at the Canadian Consulate during New York City Jewellery Week. And I'm in 3 exhibitions and no one's giving me any money. So it's really tricky for us. And I know that in the States it might be even worse. I don't know.
Oh man, I ran into the Current Obsession gals and I was like, so the newspaper. And she's like, Dutch government, baby.
Yeah.
I was like, damn it, the Dutch. They have so much money. I remember we were trying to like outbid, oh gosh, were they Norwegian? It was for Schmuck. We were trying to get like a gallery space, and when we found out this other group who definitely had government funding was bidding against us, we're like, they win. Because they can keep going and we can't. Yeah, it's hard. And then with Le Labo, that is, it's just you. It's just you doing it everywhere. All right.
But the participant can get grants to take part in the labo.
Oh.
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
got any successful?
Professional, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Few of them got.
Is anybody in here Canadian and a grant writer by any chance? If you need one, become best friends with them. Take them to dinner, do whatever they need. Because grant writers make the world go round. I know one contemporary art jeweler, Megan Patrice Riley, who in her career before jewelry was a professional grant writer. And that girl has a working studio in Brooklyn. She travels all over. And I'm always like, how do you do it? And she's like, I wrote a grant. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I wish I had that sort. It is. I mean, I know I could probably do it, but I mean, have you guys thought about that? Are you pressuring yourselves to do that more?
We have written 2 grants.
Yeah.
They're both sitting right now, hoping to publish a catalog for our, we have kind of pretty big exhibition coming up soon, but they're sitting, so we're waiting.
Okay, but you did it.
But we did it, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then sometimes, like, the amount of time that it takes to write a grant and work, like, there are easier ways to make money. Like, you know, charging for the catalogue, charging, charging for entrance to shows, the member funds, donation for wine at openings makes quite a lot of money, surprisingly, you know? So,
So I love that this is happening in here at the Canadian Consulate. I think this is pretty amazing. I think it sends a message that the Canadians are at New York City Jewelry Week. Is there a specific, besides this, is there a specific exhibition going on that is only contemporary art jewelry from Canada? No? I'm interested in terms of your organization sitting, that you're representing. Do you guys talk to each other? Is there much like, hey, how's it going over there? Or any kind of thought about how to collaborate and to kind of join forces?
Metalade is really exceptional at making sure that our call for entries are passed through their mailing list and on their website. And there have been some very generous pieces written about Coadoran for Metalade, so Metalade for sure. Coadoran and the VMAA share a lot of members.
Oh, okay.
Like a huge number of members, so we're in touch with them through a lot of maybe social paths, but yeah, we're in touch.
and then I'm not on the board anymore of FEMA, but the new direction that they've been kind of forced to take through, there's a certain amount of burnout from the members of organising things, and they've realised that it's smart, work a bit smarter and share, work with other organisations. So we work with the Craft Council of BC. We have an annual show in their gallery. Coadorn did. Do you want to talk about that or?
Yeah, sure.
I didn't know about this because they're having a show in Vancouver. And go on, you talk about it.
Oh, okay. So we have an upcoming call for entry if anyone is interested. Entries are due on December 1st for a show that's called Placement. And it's traveling from Halifax, and then it's going to Seoul, South Korea, and then it's going to Visual Space Gallery in Vancouver. Everything has worked out for us in the end because we have two fantastic curators who helped us secure gallery space, but originally we were supposed to be doing a collaborative exhibition with the Vancouver Metal Arts Association, and they were discouraged by their crafts council from working with us because we're too young of an organization, and they didn't think they would be able to get any funding.
So it wasn't us, it was them.
Yeah, let's blame the government.
Yeah.
The them, yeah. Yeah.
But it's so interesting to me because everybody has to start somewhere. It's like in academia, you have to have like 5 years teaching experience to get a teaching job. I'm like, wait, scratch my head. I don't know how that happens.
That's why I think Metal Aid's pretty smart to stay out of it for a little, as long as they can,
Yeah.
to establish a few things that to prove that it is possible, and then maybe later.
Yeah.
One thing that, just especially because of the audience, is that all of the exhibitions that most of the exhibitions are open to internationally. It's just to do, there's a few issues with shipping, but if you know someone in Vancouver, you can ship it to them, and then,
Call them Christmas ornaments.
yeah, fabric decorations. Yeah, so, because we don't want to just be showing to ourselves. It's exciting for our members and students and new people to see work from all over the world, and that's what's happened with our exhibitions and with Coadorn.
Okay, well, speaking of that, like internationally, as contemporary art jewelers, I'm sure you'd like to represent yourself as Canadian contemporary art jewelers. I think that's important as well. Have any of you shown at Schmuck? Do you know of any, like last year and the previous years, has there been Canadian art jewelry shows at Schmuck, Munich Jewelry Week?
Not necessarily like Canadian contemporary jewelry shows at Schmuck specifically. There's been a few Canadians that were part of Schmuck, or Talente, like Clarissa Long was part of Talente last year or the previous year from Vancouver. There's, as Noël mentioned, Anne-Marie Rivière, who did the Labo. She right away was part of Schmuck, which was amazing. Like there is a presence. Despo, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What is that?
Despo Sophocles, 2 years
What's
ago. Despo?
Oh, a person.
Yeah. But there are a few Canadian artists that
Yeah.
to Schmuck over the years, but not much.
I mean, I met you there the year, really,
Yeah, but I'm taking part to Schmuck. I'm going to Frame next year. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
reading a couple of Canadians. Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah, because last year the Israeli artists got together and did a show, because it made me think of this conversation that we're having today, trying to grow your community and foster more engagement. Same thing with Israeli contemporary art jewelry, and I thought it was fantastic, because they have such a small community in some ways. To see them band together and have this show at Schmuck and create all this hype around it, I was like, yes, go them. It was awesome.
There's been one at Parcours Bijou, not at Schmuck, but Parcours Bijou in 2017, which I was one of the coordinators.
Ah, it's French. Okay, I have no idea what that
in
is.
Paris. So it's every 3 years. It's happening again next fall, actually, in 2020. And there's going to be another Canadian show, which I'm co-curating with this lovely lady, Catherine Walsh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, I guess maybe I'm on all the Canadian projects. Yeah. But yeah, so never at Schmuck specifically, but I think there's, like you're talking about identifying ourselves as Canadian art jewelry artists. I think there's something, maybe I just have like a absolute misconception of the years before I was actually active in the field, but I feel like there's never, like Canada is a little bit insular in some ways because there's like, as Louise mentioned before, it's such a small population and such a big big territory, it's really hard for smaller artistic communities to have contacts between each other.
Mhm.
And then we kind of, like, I feel like there's no, maybe like from that, it's hard to feel like there is something happening and having the incentive of going and bringing your work outside of the country and being like active in the field. And that's something that we really wanted to encourage with Metal Aid, like kind of just stimulating the community and having people be like, oh my God, we're doing something in Canada, let's, I'm gonna apply to this show, like just giving people, you know, like the incentive to do things. And I don't know if it worked or if it's just a coincidence, but I feel like in the past few years there's been more and more presence of Canadian artists doing like, and also kind of reclaiming like, yeah, we're Canadian jewelry artists. Like I think
Yeah.
it's sort of something that we're reclaiming because we haven't been so present. So I don't know, I kind of see it that way. I don't know if other people have the same view on this or if I'm just saying some things that don't make sense.
And since over the, you know, for over 20 years, before it was always South and also like Vancouver was more collaborating with American artists from Seattle, and outside it was with New York, Boston, and so now we're changing, we try to do this more, and all the group together South, so it's better, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on the up and up?
Yeah.
Oh. I haven't even touched on this. I mean, technically it's Society of North American Goldsmiths. Hey, North American. Oh wait, raise your hand, are you Canadian? Raise your hand if you're Canadian. Okay, raise your hand if you're involved with SNAG at all. Okay, not too bad, yeah. I'm interested to know how much of your organizations have thought about being a part of that in terms of putting on exhibitions there or just having a presence there?
We had an Adorned Spaces show, the Zima had an Adorned Spaces show, and I can't remember which city it was. It wasn't this year, it was last year, I think. So we've done that. We did apply to speak as an organisation at SNAG and didn't get it a few years ago.
Okay, SNAG. I was just kidding. Yeah, okay. Have you guys put any?
Not SNAG now.
Yeah.
We have uploaded all of our exhibition catalogs to the digital archives on Art Jewelry Forum,
Okay,
but not SNAG.
okay.
That's how we actually got Pasha on the team.
Yay.
Yeah. Well, SNAG had, it's not happening anymore, but they had this SNAG Connects program for a little while with, I don't know if any of you are familiar with it or if some of you were some of the SNAG Connects representatives, but Pasha was the contact for all of Canada. So that's also a thing, like the Society of North American Goldsmiths, obviously North America includes Canada, but then they had this one rep for,
All of Canada.
yeah,
Yeah.
this guy. So we started, Pasha originally wasn't on the team directly, but we started working with him and having him, like, sort of, we co-hosted, actually the first Metal Aid meetup in Toronto was co-hosted by SNAG through Pasha.
Oh, okay.
And then we started collaborating more and more with Pasha, kind of trying to create this link with SNAG, and then eventually that SNAG Connects program sort of died down, and we were like, well, we're gonna keep you.
Yeah.
That was our collaboration with SNAG. Thank you, SNAG.
Exactly. So how is membership going for all of you? Are you, I mean, well, sorry, Noel, that's different for you. I mean, yeah, you're good. How many members or participants do you have at a time? Into the mic, please.
Yeah. For now, I think I've had about 50 students.
Oh, it's 50? Wow, you're busy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Zima's at about 100, and it's grown every year. It grows a little bit.
Oh, it does?
Mhm.
Oh, nice. And then, well, Metal Aid is more like,
We only have subscribers, no members, so it's
Yeah.
really people that are following our activities through either our social media, the newsletter, which is a big thing that we do in terms of sharing information. So there's no membership thing set up at all. It's really through just working with people directly.
How many on your newsletter? Do you know?
Alex Kinsley?
186.
Okay,
A lot
there
of
you go.
people don't view it on the actual email, they view it on our social media.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And then
Yeah, we're
Coador?
in the 80s roughly. for members,
Okay.
yeah.
Nice. What kind of ways are you trying to facilitate new memberships? Are you trying to push it, or?
We don't push it, we find that people will
Find
find
you.
us, yeah. We
Yeah.
don't have to work too hard at that, but we have lots of helpers that are spreading the word, so that's,
Mhm.
we're not actively seeking members, but always happy to have them.
This might be a curveball, but if you had to describe what is like the Canadian contemporary jewelry aesthetic, do you think there is kind of something that ties you together? Because when I've traveled internationally, I kind of feel like there's definitely like the European aesthetic, very different from American in some ways. And I don't know, I was just curious, do you guys think of that at all?
I think Noelle should answer that. You would know better than
Yes.
anyone.
In fact, over the past 15 years, it has changed so much now because people
Yeah.
are traveling so much, and they go to outside to studies as well, so they come back with different way of expressing themselves. So before it was less experimental, more work with silver, traditional ways, very sculptural, but for the past 15, 20 years it's very different.
Different
And I think
materials.
there's much more communication through the social media, and I think it's changed a lot. So I think it's difficult to know where they're from, in fact.
I think one thing specific in Canada, as we mentioned earlier, there's not that many degree granting programs in jewelry higher education, and there's even less grad school
Yeah.
opportunities in Canada. There's none in Quebec, which I think I'm not sure how you originally started the Labo, but I feel like
Because of
there's
Yeah.
so in Quebec, we have a thing called Cégep, which is unique to Quebec. It's a sort of a post-secondary, pre-university education program. So for craft studies, it's 3 years, but it's an artistically driven technical program, really. So that's the only option if you want to go to university and study jewelry. I did, but I went to Nova Scotia, which it was amazing. But yeah, so there's only three universities that have jewelry programs, only 2 options for grad school, so not that many people end up, maybe they'll have a BFA, but not that many people will end up doing a master's. So I feel like there's something less academic maybe in the concepts, in the treatment of forms and materials, and maybe more, I wanted to say vernacular, which is funny because but more, I don't know, like intuitive or something. I don't know if it really translates into an aesthetic of some sort, but definitely, less academic, if that makes sense.
Oh, makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel that I can often tell where someone was educated by
Yeah.
looking at the work or the materials, because I know what schools teach pinbacks what way, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
can see it sometimes in the work.
Yeah, it's so interesting because there's so many less academic institutions. That's really funny. The same thing in America. Like certain people, that they go to SUNY New Paltz and study under Myra Midlish Gray. Since there's only 2 programs for grad school, is there a grad school program internationally that you find that a lot of Canadian jewelers kind of flock to? Is that a bizarre question?
I can answer for students who went to the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design. Many will go to Indiana. Many go to
Oh,
SUNY.
which one in Indiana?
What is it called?
the one that Natalie
Yeah.
is?
I saw you Carbondale, is it the, no, that's not in Indiana.
No.
Illinois.
Illinois.
It'll come. We have a lot of students who go to SUNY Falls,
Oh, of
and
course.
a lot that will go to the Art Institute of Chicago for grad school.
Oh, okay.
And for some, we also have a lot that go to the Academy in Munich.
Oh, okay, yeah.
This kind of seem to be a feeder school for those universities.
Yeah. So for your programs, what is the future like? Like, what are you working on? Are you hoping to have a bigger presence at Schmuck and do like a show together? I mean, talk to me. What are your hopes and dreams?
Who wants to go?
Okay, I'll start. Okay, so we have our show that is our big traveling show that's coming up next. Followed by that, one of our members, Emily Lewis, is hosting us at her gallery in Quebec City.
And what's the name of that gallery?
Gallery Lewis.
Gallery, that's just it?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Is that okay to say?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And then through connections that we made at SOFA 2 weeks ago, our next plan is we've worked something out to maybe have something at Off Hoya.
Oh, okay, right on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of it. A lot of exhibition things. We threw around the ideas of having a symposium, but we don't know that, we're trying to decide whether or not anyone would fly to Halifax for a symposium.
Oh, yeah.
I would.
Well, because how far, give me an idea, like geographically here, like how far is,
So we are the furthest land point east.
Yeah.
So we're closest to Maine,
oh, okay.
but still like a 15-hour drive to Boston and an 18-hour drive to Montreal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we're
Yeah, you're not just like hopping
we're
over.
a little isolated.
And Toronto and Quebec are kind of close?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, somewhat close.
And is that where like the hip young kids are flocking to these days, Montreal, Quebec? Is that it? No?
I would if I was hip and young. I would.
Okay. I'm trying to, well, you know, here it's, you know, when you're trying to make it, you graduate, and I think there's this idea that you go to New York City, right? Like that is where you go to kind of try to like immerse yourself in a community and build a business, even though it's like ungodly expensive. So I was just interested in there's like a specific city that you think that a lot of artists tend to flock to.
I think probably both. I mean, I would say Toronto and Montreal, maybe Vancouver. I'm like, I've never been to Vancouver, so I can't
Visit
tell.
us.
I know, I need
Yeah.
to go see you.
I could go to Vancouver. Just kidding.
Let's go together.
Okay, Debbie.
I was supposed to say this. There's a big art scene in Vancouver. There's a lot. We have Emily Carr University, is one of the big art universities. They don't have any craft programs anymore, but
Yeah.
yes, there are a lot of artists in Vancouver.
And besides Gallery Lewis and Gallery Guillemot, got it, thank you. Is there any other contemporary art jewelry focused galleries?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one in Ottawa called LA Pie. I
Oh,
mean, they're not only jewelry, but they do carry a lot of our jewelry. And like it's like a contemporary craft gallery.
Yeah.
So they have like glass textiles and other practices, but there's a lot of jewelry.
I gotta say, for a community that's like pretty spread out and, you know, smaller in some regards, to have 3 galleries supported in Canada is pretty great.
Not much.
What?
It's not enough.
Oh, it's not enough, no, yeah, but you
There's
know,
nothing in Vancouver. There's no
Yeah.
specific.
but you know, we're dropping like flies in the United States too. It's R.I.P. Velvet Da Vinci. So yeah, and then it's, you know, it's really interesting, we're in New York City, but there's not really a contemporary art jewelry gallery here, you know, which is shocking. Anybody wants to fund one, come at us. But yeah, I think that's just really interesting. So I think it says a lot about you in that regard, that there are 3 galleries going.
2 in Quebec.
Oh, what's the other, both of you are in Quebec?
I'm in Quebec City. He's in Montreal.
Oh, okay.
And I don't
Yeah.
have just jewelry either.
Oh, you don't have just jewelry
It's
either?
contemporary craft. It's mostly jewelry. but-
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
But
Okay.
can I ask a question?
Yeah, go.
So I think just you know, I've been in Canada for 20 years, but I think the Quebecois people or people in Montreal are more interested in dressing up, in wearing contemporary jewelry, whereas Vancouver, West Coast is the West Coast. Right?
Hoodies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
know.
feel like we all think that of other parts of
Your
Canada.
faculty.
Yeah, or like
Yeah, the market
in
is
Quebec,
not-
we're always like,
not
oh,
only in
people are
Montreal.
not
I
over
would
to
not-
this stuff, like yeah.
So maybe it's just wishful thinking. I don't know, Montreal women seem a little bit more
I think
interesting.
there's some confusion because I have a gallery in Montreal, so I'm doing a lot with the gallery. I'm doing exhibition regularly. I'm inviting artists to come, and I'm doing a lot of exhibition outside of the gallery as well. So people have the impression that Montreal is going, wow,
Yeah.
but no,
Yeah.
because of the
Sorry.
gallery
Yeah.
activities.
Wow, we have been talking just about 45 minutes. Is there anything that you want to comment on or that we didn't touch on that you felt you really wanted to say while you were up here? Do we feel good about what we talked about today? You're all looking at me a little.
I think so.
Blank.
Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, should we open the conversation?
Exactly, that's what,
Yeah.
I
yes.
just wanted to say that I'm trying to do a lot for the Canadian jewelry as well.
Yeah,
And because I was here for the labo, not for the gallery, but
Yeah.
I would like to mention that I've done in Parcours Bijoux in Paris a show with a lot of with the participants of the labo, and I have done a publication, so you can look at it. And I have a show in the museum now in the Ross Museum, and it's with the Francophone artists. So most of them are from Quebec. 7, and I invited people from Belgium, Switzerland, France also to be part of it. And the opening is tonight, but I'm here.
of course.
So I try to do my best to promote
Yeah.
Canadian.
Yeah, I didn't specifically address that, but I felt, inherently it's, you all are putting a lot of time and energy into your organizations. It's obvious that you care a lot and you're trying to facilitate opportunities for others, and it's important. What you're doing is really important for the community.
It's hard to know sometimes. I feel like we, with Metal Aid, there's 5 of us working together, and we give so much time and work to this, and it's hard to sort of quantify, are we doing this and thinking that we're beneficial, or is this just us putting a lot of work into something where people are like, oh yeah, I got another email, and it's really hard to know, but then putting this, putting out the call for entry for even, just a digital exhibition with the number of applications that we got, and then the number of people who were like, I don't know you, this is fantastic. It's nice to see that we're able to sort of reach outside of our circles, because as I said, we're all from Harbourfront Center. Most of us are from NSCAD University also, the 2 others are from George Brown College. We're all sort of stemming from the same institutions and same places, so it's hard to know sometimes if we're really able to reach out to a different public and different groups of people and have an actual impact, or if we're just telling ourselves that we're great.
I'm a member of Metal Aid and Coadorn, and you've created a fantastic platform for our work, and reading the interviews, and I teach as well, so I'm able to direct my students towards your work, and they get to see what's happening. I think it's fantastic what you're doing.
It's like a digital message board. Yeah, it's important. So, hello. Does anybody have any questions for any of the panelists? Yes, you?
I guess it's for everybody. So Canadian Diamonds, it's a big export and it's definitely no.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
It's nothing worse than you can't hear what people are saying.
Canadian Diamonds are a big export, and I know marketed heavily. Do you guys see any part of that? Do they work with you? Do they reach out? Is there anything? Like, because that's what I really know from, you know, like I work with Canadian Diamonds, but I don't know any of you guys. And it feels weird, like there should be like a connection there.
Can you answer that? I feel like you're probably the person who would know the most.
No, the answer's no.
Sucks.
Yeah, it's too bad, I think, but yeah, no. I mean, a lot of the mining companies have contests for designs, mining designs, that kind of thing, but nothing specifically with us anyway.
I think maybe more with like educational facilities, with institutions that are, like we're kind of all the like grassroots little weird organizations, and I feel like the institutions also, I don't know how it is in America, but in Canada, or and especially in Quebec, I think institutions are extremely strong. And sometimes I find that it's a little bit hard when you're an alternative organization that's not institutionalized. It's hard to sort of gain some kind of legitimate place and legitimate voice in collaboration with those, collaborating with those markets or other, I don't know. Yeah, does that make sense?
There's a lot of
Maybe like
bureaucracy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, actually you mentioned that you couldn't get funding because you're under a certain years of. I find that really interesting where it's almost, you think they would celebrate you as organizations more and support you more to help lift you up.
They want to know their money is safe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I don't have a question, just a statement that I find all of the work that's been portrayed on the screen absolutely beautiful, and all the different materials you use. And I'm really encouraged in that you're all calling yourselves art jewelers, and are truly art jewelers, and being somebody from that field, I really appreciate all that. So,
Thank you.
Yes.
I'd like to share a good news story. My name is Isabel Fish. I'm in Toronto. I organized recently a fundraiser for a hospital that was based on jewelry. And we approached, Paul McClure was helping me with that, Pasha was helping me with that. And we approached an enormous number of artists. All those who could give, did give. And out of 68 pieces, we sold 64.
Wow.
And I can tell you that the women, it was mostly women who were there, were blown away by the work, were staggered that they didn't know that the Canadian jewelry field was so rich, so diverse, and so interesting. So what it tells me is that you guys need to go out there and make yourself known, because there is a market. I grant you that it's probably more contemporary, more, excuse me, more classical than some of the pieces we see here, but I've seen a lot of names on the screen that donated and did very well at the auction. So, there's a market out there. Maybe you need to dig a little bit deeper.
That's really good to hear. One of the problems that I think a lot of these organizations have is that we're all talking to each other. And we have this goal to grow an audience and get more collectors, but we're just talking to each other, and we're not going into the headspace of the kind of person who would have the money and the lifestyle to wear this stuff. So it's quite a tricky thing to do, but stuff like that fundraiser sounds like the right direction.
Is there a museum, I mean, because, the Museum of Art and Design has loot, and the Norton, I know, hey girl. And Bijou, the Norton Museum in Florida had Bijou. Is there something like that in Canada? Is there a bigger museum supporting art jewelry?
We approached the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia to start a jewelry collection. It's on hold, but they didn't say no.
Hey.
There was something in Montreal,
Yeah.
I would say about
No.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Musée des Arts Décoratifs, Art Decorative Museum in Montreal.
Yeah.
Until 2000, they had a major collection of contemporary jewelry in the world.
Oh, wow.
And that museum has been donated to the Fine Art Museum in Montreal, and since then they start collecting jewelry. It's only donation.
Oh, okay.
So now it's a huge lack in their
Yeah.
collection. Yeah.
We love to get something like loot up there.
I tried.
Sometimes when you say it out loud enough, you're like.
But that's definitely one thing that's really hard to sort of not only reach out to the general public, but also reach out to the art world in order to get jewelry out there. Like it's really tricky. As we said, we kind of keep working amongst each other and talking to each other and like patting ourselves on the back, but it's tricky to get the message out there, and that's something we try to do, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's
To the
a
greater
big
public
process.
that
Yeah.
does not care
Yeah,
about
yeah.
contemporary jewelry, but just likes jewelry.
Even to have press cover, it's very difficult. You
Yeah.
don't have events like maybe 5, 6 a year and nothing in the press.
Mm-hmm.
So how to catch people's attention, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
And as you know, my gallery is one of the major streets in Montreal, on Saint Laurent Boulevard, and it's very difficult.
Yeah.
We recently had a show called Broach in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, in the area where our commuter ferry passes through, and it was in a window, and they're thinking that maybe up to 10,000 people saw the jewelry in that show. So even though we didn't sell anything, we feel like we're slowly chipping away at people and making them see the work is something, even though it maybe doesn't equate to sales yet.
Yeah.
But you know, with the gallery, the fact that I'm open 6 days a
Of
week,
course, yeah.
it's, you know, people, they come one a time, they come a few months later, but you have to repeat it all the time, and you have to have kind of a physical place to educate people and to get their attention to the jewelry.
It'd be interesting to see, I mean, dreaming big, if you know, all of you approached one institution together trying to like propose something such as like a loot or some kind of art jewelry fair. Of course, that's like dreaming big, but you know, one organization writing a grant before joining together, you never know. It always surprises me. I mean, speaking of community, you know, I just installed a show yesterday, and if it wasn't for my community, the show would not be installed. So it's amazing how your community can support you if you reach out and let them know what you want. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, really great talk, by the way. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more maybe about residencies that there are in Canada. I know about the Harbourfront one in Toronto, and I think I heard that there's one in Halifax, but like, maybe, I don't know if the Halifax one's associated with the school or not, or what they're for.
Sure, so I can talk about Halifax. So Craft Nova Scotia actually has operates a residency where every summer they do something called Aircraft. It's open to applications, and they give you 24-hour studio space, and at the conclusion there is an exhibition.
I did it, it's amazing.
Oh.
There's one in Quebec City at the École de Joaillerie Québec. Many benches, so you can apply either as an individual artist for a project, a research project, or you can also apply as a collective, which is amazing. They had, for a while, they had the Quebec City-based collective called Filière 11, there's some members over here, who did a residency there, I think for 6 months. Yeah, and they, so how many of you was it in the studio? 10? So 10 artists were sharing the studio together. They had this, they each developed some work and had like a final kind of exhibition in the workspace. So that's a really cool residency, and they started that not so long ago, I think a couple of years ago, and it's still kind of in the works. And Metal Aid also is trying to get the word out there. So that's always, it's a thing. Like there are things, but I feel like there's so many things that people are not aware of. But yeah, and the HarborFront Center residency obviously is great. I feel like I'm talking as if I had done them all. I did do the one in Toronto. I did 2 other ones though. But yeah, the Toronto one has, there's a summer residency for people who are students going back to school in September, and there's also a full-time residency, which is up to 3 years of being in the studio as a full-time artist there, which is also great. Other than that, what other residencies is there? Is there some in Vancouver or on the West Coast?
No, not specific to art jewelry.
Right.
You know what's been trending, I've been noticing, is smaller micro residencies that artists are facilitating themselves. There was, I mean, I can only speak to American organizations that have done it, but a woman named Sarah Brown and Sandals started something called Smitten, which is where they just invite 15 artists and they all pay in and they go to a beautiful place that they find that they can rent for a week together, and they cook meals together and they share the studio and they've exhibited together. I helped start something called Pentaculum, which again is invitation, and you come for a week and you pay for the experience, you know, $500, but then you're in a studio for a week and you get to connect with artists and create this really strong bonds within your community too that continue to grow afterwards. You're here. She can. So did he. But that would be interesting too, because you're so spread out that if you created something where one week out of the year people could pay in to go to a place and stay and rent a studio together. They keep popping up. I keep seeing more people kind of organizing things, doing things like that. Any other questions? Because there's wine and cheese. I'm not anxious or anything. Well, I want to say thank you for having me. This was really fun to get to do and get to meet you all and have this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for coming and taking part and being so attentive. Yeah? Anybody else want to say anything?
Just follow us on Instagram.
What's your Instagram handle?
Metal Aid.
Yeah, let's go down the line. We got Metal Aid. What's Coadorn?
Yeah, we're at Coadorn.
Oh, that's easy. All right. Metal Aid.
Yeah, and if anybody.
What now? I can't remember what the Lima one is.
Vancouver
Vancouver.
And the website is vancouvermedalarts.com.
And then we know your gallery, but if more people want to find more information about Le Labo, where's that?
They have to contact me directly.
Oh,
Yeah.
Check out
man, I love this.
Yeah, just
that's
you can look in that what's happened during the labo. And this one, it was in 2015 when we did it. Something like that. It was 5 years of the labo. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to speak French to do it, do you?
No, it's.
Yeah. And then one more time, what's the call that's coming up? That's December 1st.
Oh yeah, placement. You can find it at co-adorn.com under our call for entry section. So yeah, it's going from Halifax to South Korea to Vancouver over a 6-month period. So please apply.
Yeah, you get that line on your bio that says
Yes.
exhibited both nationally and internationally. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.